So, when Advaja Siddhi asked me to talk about celebrating the order, well, I must say I felt the word celebrating sounds a bit over-dramatic to me, a bit theatrical almost. But then I thought, well, what a good challenge, try and do this talk. Even though I do think just even ordinary appreciation, rejoicing in merits, mudita doesn't come easily to most Nordic people. I think we all need more of it. So I think it is a good idea to try and talk about it. So what do I personally want to celebrate about the order? So I've been reflecting quite a bit on this, and I do appreciate that I had to do it. Actually, I think it's interesting and helpful to ask every now and then, what is the order? What is this thing I'm involved in? I've been in the order for nearly 37 years. That's a long time, and I have seen quite a few changes. So what I got involved with was pretty different what I'm involved in now. Well, perhaps the biggest change actually happened fairly recently. We all know we became Triratna Buddhist order. So we already got quite used to this name, but yes, we got used to, when I got ordained, I got used to FWBO, even though I always thought it's a very awkward name to have, but particularly in Finnish, because what it is in Finnish is länsimaisen buddhalaisen veljeskunnan ystävät, which is a bit of a mouthful. So we hardly ever use this. What we did, we used the English initials pronounced in a Finnish way. So FVBO. So it's really a bit strange to explain to people what this movement is. But also, when I was ordained, I didn't become a Dharmacharini. I became an upasika. So my Finnish friend is laughing because sika in Finnish means pig. So languages. I didn't mind this then, but I don't think I ever used the title. My ordination happened at the end of an ordinary open women's retreat on a small farm outside Norwich, which this farm was, for a short while, the first women's retreat centre, called Mandarava. Didn't last very long. But there was a chicken hut which was decorated for private ordinations. Yeah, very beautiful. And some kind men from Norwich built up a sort of garage-type hall for the public ordination. At the last minute, they got it ready. And I was ordained only with one person called Vimala, and we received a kesa, but it didn't have 3 jewels on it. It had a golden Dharma chakra. This happened on Bante's birthday in August 26, in 1978. In 1982, the kesas were changed, and this is one of my most memorable memories of a very memorable occasion, when my precious memories of all the order members who possibly could gathered somewhere in Britain, can't remember where, and we burnt those old cases in a big fire. We stood in a circle on this hillside, darkness fell, there was a big fire, we put the cases and watched them burn. And yes, we stood there quite a long while, reflecting what was happening, what was the significance of the cases of that event. And then we went inside and we received a new case like these current ones from Sangharakshita. So we all kneeled in front of him. He put a new case around our neck. So, in a sense, we recommitted ourselves to the three jewels, to Bhante and his teaching, to our practice. And since then, also order members have been called Dharmacharis and Dharmacharinis. I did not have Mitra study or ordination process. One just picked things up those days. So the growth of the movement was very organic. And perhaps it's very important to know this, that all these structures we have now grew up quite organically from us practicing Buddhism in the West. But of course, all depended on Bhante being very active, very actively involved, and it depended on his vast energy, his experience, his inspiration, and his practical organizational skills. So I think when we celebrate the order, we celebrate Bhante being in touch with bodhicitta, which gave birth to the order. And I personally am excited and grateful to be part of his vision manifesting in the world. And I try and remember this when things get tough in the everyday life. I do feel, like Advaita said, that this is what makes my life meaningful. So I stayed on in England after my ordination, as I was asked by Bhante and Subhuti to work in the office of the London Buddhist Centre, which was opening then. So Subhuti was chair and I was secretary. And it was a huge project for a 10-year-old order. And as far as I remember, most experienced order members were involved in this one project. And I find it a very exciting time. All these great experienced order members around I was working with. And also I was living in a community first time with Sridevi. We were radical, we were having an effect on society, we were very enthusiastic. One memory from that time has stayed with me, however. One of those experienced order members said to me, "You are very enthusiastic, Sridevi, but enthusiasm is not the same as inspiration." So I was taken aback a bit. I felt a bit hurt. But this has been worth contemplating over the years, I think. I have lost that initial enthusiasm. And one of the crucial questions has been for me, what is inspiration and how to deepen it? I've always been pretty regular in my practice, but the main issue has been how to find more intensity and depth. Because at least I find that habit takes over so easily. The things we do in the movement, in the order, they become so easily habitual. They are familiar. So at the moment, I'm still working on this, and I would formulate this question now: how to keep in touch with Virya and develop more of it. So we all know what Virya is. I have been very fortunate that I loved learning English when I was at school in northern Finland, and then at university in Helsinki. Reading Bante's books has been very easy for me. I got to interpret for Bante when he visited in Finland. Later I worked as one of his secretaries in Norwich. I have lived and worked around 3 centres in Britain. I got to travel even as far as India. And yes, I do remember visiting Netherlands and teaching yoga and women's retreats in Germany and so on. And I do appreciate the fact that being in the order has, well, literally expanded my horizons, as well as, inwardly and spiritually. And this has been wonderful. However, I sometimes reflect that being so fascinated by all things English and learning the Dharma in English has also meant acquiring some anglicizing conditioning. The Finns sometimes tell me I'm a bit anglicized, whatever that means. But after living in Finland again for a long time, I was invited to work at T. Ratanaloka in 2006. And I stayed there living and working for 6 years. And this has been my best experience of teamwork and cooperation. And an experience of a very integrated lifestyle. So living and working with the same people. And also it was an opportunity to explore again and again with very motivated women who came from different countries to be in the ordination process. This question, what is the order? So after decades of involvement, I now got finally to clarify in theory and practice what the principles of the order are. To try to grasp more and more deeply what Bante's vision is. And particularly having had that experience, living and working at Tirunaloka, I want to celebrate the institutions of the movement and the order, and those order members who work in them. And when I was writing this, I thought, I must mention here Adhisthana, because I think it's wonderful we now have also Adhisthana. And I personally, I rejoice in the merits of all public preceptors who take so much responsibility, so much more responsibility than I can, and guard the spirit of the order. I became much more aware of these things at T. Ratanaloka. So T. Ratanaloka runs very efficiently on a well-established program, and the team, I feel they really show their commitment to the principles. So they have the clarity and the creativity of showing how you can be committed to the principles and creative in their application. So we explored again and again such things as 4 lines of acceptance, which I didn't actually remember saying when I was ordained. So we explored them very, very thoroughly. And so we had these retreats called What is the Order? And apart from those retreats and the ethics retreats, I found most stimulating the transcendental principle retreats, where, of course, you study the survey. And I found it really exciting to go more deeply into the ideas in the first chapter of the survey. And one of the realizations I had, I'm still pondering, still trying to understand more, is the fact that order is a practice. And how, but also how this means practicing the middle way. So I learned the order is an expression of Madhyama Marga, metaphysically, psychologically, ethically. We can all explore this at some point. But it is the middle way when it is an expression of the creative mind. Because it's of course, the reactive mind. These terms are very helpful, Bante's terms. Reactive mind is the one we experience when we have these extreme views. And I find they become more and more subtle the longer I practice, but I still find myself swinging to some extent between eternalism and nihilism. I still swing to some extent between willfulness and craving for non-existence, quiet life, drifting, between craving for experience, even spiritual experience, and that's the hedonistic side, wanting to have all this experience. But then the other side, I crave for ethical rules, and I find this tendency of repressing my instincts. That's the other side. So all these things, very interesting. Thus to look at what views are, becoming more aware I have views, and how they affect my mind and my experience. So sometimes I feel it's more important to emphasize changing myself, and other times, I must emphasize discovering what's in me. So what is the mind that goes beyond both of these? So I celebrate our order, which aspires to practice the middle way and transcend all views. So I do aspire to see more and more clearly how this means realizing, the present of the middle way would be realizing that others and a universe, the whole universe, is the result of conditionality. It arises on the basis of conditionality. Advait Siddhi talked about it, very practical ways. And to actually see that self and the world are interconnected. So, but also realizing, looking more deeply into our system of practice. How is it based on conditionality? Really seeing that enlightenment is a result of creating the conditions for it to arise. And ethically, how do, to actually having faith, practicing the 10 precepts leads to, if we believe in karma, does lead to a spontaneous ethical behavior. And most interestingly, finding myself forcing being willful or wanting to be lazy and idle. You know, what is the middle way between these, above these? It's the bodhisattva motivation. So wanting to help myself, wanting to help the world, wanting to realize, understand the Dharma more deeply, be inspired. So actually I want to find out how working for the Dharma can be a unification of self-fulfillment and altruism. How the personal myth can be unified with a collective myth. So, I think the order is a living paradox. It is a bodhisattva. And I must say, I celebrate our practice of study and discussion in groups, which challenges me to think. I think if I'm left to my own devices, I'll quickly read lots of books. But I've been in training to learn to think more, which actually is wonderful when you do it. So working at Tirnaloka led fairly organically to me becoming a private preceptor. And this is something I could never have foreseen when I first got involved. I didn't see the necessity of it because I didn't have a long-term vision. And being a Finn, I don't find trust easy. So someone trusting me so much that I give them a name has been an extraordinary experience. In the order which I entered, Bhante did all the ordinations as well as writing all the books. I could trust him, but it was quite a leap from that to appreciate other order members becoming preceptors, and even myself. So last month I was at Akashavana, ordaining 3 Scandinavian women, and it was a delight to give the name Mudita Devi to someone who is the first homegrown Norwegian Dharmacharini. Every time I go to Akashavana, it seems like magic that that place exists. But the most magical moment was the first time I sat in that ordination kuti and gave my first ordinand the name Virya Pushpa. So seeing spiritual qualities in others certainly helps me to get in touch with inspiration and to trust the order. Private ordinations are the most moving and public ordinations the most celebratory occasions I have experienced in my whole life. But in a gathering like this, a Mainland convention, I particularly want to celebrate our differences and our aspiration to accept and appreciate difference. So I think we have to first appreciate before we can transcend. So, to give you a bit of a sense of the Nordic region, the centers in Helsinki, in Stockholm, in Oslo, and in Tallinn are quite different from each other. And this can also be said of the 2 retreat centers in Scandinavia, Dharmagiri in Sweden, Abhayaloka in Finland. So we have these 2 retreat centers, and both are old wooden primary schools. But Abhayaloka is bohemian, it's a bit run down. There are lots of art, there's a lot of paintings by an order member artist. And we have untamed nature, we have a lake, we have a sauna building. So sauna bath is on the program every retreat, summer and winter. So in winter you have to make a hole in the ice to get into the lake. So quite exotic. But Dharmagiri is newer, bigger, more efficient, more prosperous, tamer and neater. The walks in the forest, both places have a lot of forest. They are somewhat different. But there is something similar also that one can recognize as Nordic. And actually, I think it is more challenging to appreciate and enjoy difference between individuals in one Sangha. So there is something called national conditioning. And I moved back to Finland first in 1992 because I realized I needed to get to grips with this national conditioning and to feel understood on that level by other Finns. I wanted to convert those parts of me which speak only Finnish and feel at home in Finnish culture. And it has been very satisfying to experience that. It is home. So something in me relaxes on a subconscious level because it's familiar. But because one aspect of Finnish conditioning is strong individualism, that makes cooperation and harmony in the Sangha a big challenge. The aspiration is there and the tools are there. We carry on. But how to find deeper harmony and a deeper motivation to communicate the Dharma more effectively to more Finns is a long-term work in progress. So Finland is a more strange place than most. Maybe we are more individualistic than most. But the Finnish language is certainly more different from English than other European languages, except Estonian. So translation is difficult. Bhante wrote a series of beautiful poems called Sequence in a Strange Land when he visited Finland in 1975. And I always thought that he meant that Finland is strange. But writing this talk, it suddenly occurred to me, well, perhaps he just meant it was unfamiliar to him. But they're beautiful poems. Beginning goes like, or part of it goes like this. Rusty pine needles sprinkling the green moss top of an old boulder. Spring buds, half opened, shiver in untimely snow. 2 or 3 buds are enough to show that spring is here. A few words are sufficient to say what the heart means. So I think he was being very positive. Finns have a reputation for not having many words. But here, being now here on this convention, I've realized I was quite shaken up to see so much difference at the same time. When I first arrived, I felt really disoriented, almost overwhelmed. But then, exchanging a few words with some order members, you know, you don't need that many words to feel, there is a connection, And I started feeling much more at home, much more connected and relaxed. So I think that is just being here and being able to communicate, maybe not for long, but to some extent, we can get closer to what is common, what is the dimension where we can experience what unites us. So one can feel resistance to these events, because we all know that these gatherings in large numbers, this is an esoteric practice. You only know what it is once you experience it. And it challenges our individualism.